All right, welcome everybody. Today is Tuesday, the 25th of April, day 72 of our class. As it says in here, we're going to continue on our road to learning React. Now, it's interesting. I was thinking about this morning, and you've already been told. I mean, for example, Grant here, who's listening, has already taken the first year's worth of classes. All right, typically, you've taken them in reverse order, but that's what a lot of people do. So in the first semester, it's this class, AWD Web Development Technologies. In the second semester, it's AWD 1100, the C# programming. In the third semester, it's AWD 1111, which is database driven website development 1, which is a class basically with server-side Java. It teaches the MERN stack, MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js. And in semester 4, it is database driven website development 2, where you learn to write web applications using C#. Reason I'm bringing that up to you is I was thinking about this morning, and there's kind of a hole right now, HOLE. And what I mean is we really don't give React its due. All right. Because I mean, if I was sitting there thinking yesterday, okay, I'm listening to this lecture, and it's like, this is all fine. We know HTML, we know CSS, we know JavaScript. Why the hell do we need React? All right. And it's really a pretty good question. All right. And I'm trying to show you that in here. And React is unbelievably powerful, but that's how I want to start tomorrow's lecture is why would we even need to learn it? All right. So just kind of keep that in mind. Today, we're going to go through a couple more examples. All right, as I said on here, I'm going to try to keep these lectures down to approximately 2 hours and give everybody time to work on your electronic portfolio. We went over the requirements for that yesterday. The plan right now is to, like I said, lecture today, lecture tomorrow, lecture on Thursday. Friday will be a lab. Then next week, I'm not sure what we'll do yet because I want to see how far we get. One thing I was kind of contemplating, but I'd have to do a lot of work this weekend, and that is basically trying to build an entire website using React. If I can get that done, then we might do that Monday and Tuesday next week. At a minimum, at a minimum, you'll have Wednesday and Thursday of next week to finish up everything. So those of you, and there's a couple people, those of you who are behind on work, again, I will accept work late. You will be penalized for it, but I will accept work late. The only thing is, and as I've mentioned to you before, I cannot take anything after 5/4. All right. There's just no way, because with all the other stuff that I have to do. And now I was given an assignment yesterday where I'm going to have to go through our website and do some, not directly on the site, but suggest changes in some of the wording that's in there. So that's going to take even more time. And I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that I'm kind of hamstrung in that I got to have everything in by that time so I can get your grades in. All right, with that said, then let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do, and it's going to look a little different, but I wanted to go out to a website here. We'll talk about that later. But I want to go out here to developer.mozilla.org, and we're going to look at two different things here. All right, we're going to go and we're going to write the same application twice. And what I mean is when it runs, it's going to look exactly the same. So you might say, well, why are we doing that? Because I want to show you more the old fashioned way of doing it and then the more new fashioned way, if there's such a thing, of doing it. So right here with where I am, and I'm going to make sure that everything that I do during this time, I've already been building this, and that is that I save everything and give you the URLs for it. You know, you may even find out, you may say, well, do I need to look at this stuff? It may end up actually giving you some help when you get into later classes here. I don't know for sure. All right. But the first thing that's in here is it's entitled using XML HTTP request. Now, there's a whole big long story over this that I'm not going to go through. All right. The guy from Microsoft basically discovered this thing. Okay. We'll just leave it at that. So, in this guide that's here, they go through it, what happens when you do it, etc. What we are going to do in just a few minutes in two different ways is we're going to go out. Let's see if I can find it. We're for the first time going to go out to a site. I think it's, yeah, this one. Doesn't look like much. All right. But notice in here, if you go out and you give this, if you go out to numbers API like this and you give it a number, so I'll just put in 27. I don't know what this is. All right. But it's going to give you some information about the number. Well, it should, about the number 27. Right? And again, you might say 27 is the current number of amendments to the Constitution. Okay, that's fine. But I can run this and I can put in virtually about any number between 1 and maybe 300. Sometimes it's going to come out and it's going to give me that it's an uninteresting number or whatever. That isn't the point. The point is this. What we're about to do right now is we're about to write an application two different ways that are going to go out to this site that's on the internet and pull information and bring it back into our program. That's what much of the next two classes that you are going to be taking are going to be about. Now, that's not the only thing, but especially the class grant that you will take in summer, you'll be doing a lot of work where you'll be going out to APIs. You can even write your own API. We talked a little bit about this before. I mean, what's an API? It's an application program interface. It's software that can communicate with your software. You can write your own APIs. All right. You can go out and use existing APIs. All right. We're going to be looking probably tomorrow, if not tomorrow, on Thursday, at writing an app where we're just going to grab information totally out from an API. So when you do this, there are multiple number of ways of doing it. That said, two of the ways that are used quite often are using an XML HTTP request and using something that's called fetch. All right. So they're saying here, if you want to send a request, and again, it's an HTTP request. If you have not heard this before, well, shame on me, but I believe it was in your book. In fact, both books, that you're sitting there and you're at your browser. And let's say, before I did this, I type in this URL that's in here and I hit enter. What happens? I'm making what's called an HTTP or a hypertext transfer protocol request. That request is going to be sent out over the internet and it's going to be found, or whatever you want to say, by one of the web servers that's at developer.mozilla.org. If it can answer my request directly, it'll go and grab and basically format and formulate some HTML and send it back to me in what's called an HTTP response. So this whole thing of you requesting information from the internet, you getting information back, is all a process of HTTP request and HTTP response. All right. One of the ways that you can do this is by using this, which is called an XML HTTP request. So you can look at this. I don't want to go over it because totally understanding it isn't that important. What is important is being able to use it. And that's what I'm going to show you in just a moment. All right. Now, another way that you can do this, all right, rather than using the HTTP request. All right, see if I can find the other one here. No, there it is. No, it's not going to find it. Okay. and that's using the Fetch API. All right. The reason I'm telling you this is you're going to see both in action. Again, feel free to type this stuff in with me, but you don't have to. Yesterday, you should have received the URL for the entire GitHub repo for everything that I did yesterday. I'm going to do the same thing today. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow and the same thing on Thursday. So you're going to get all this stuff. So if it's easier for you to just watch, then watch. All right. So in this example right here, it's kind of made up, but you're going out to example.com, movies.json, and you're grabbing that information. All right. What's nice about this, and I'm sure you all get this already, is I don't want to store information. For example, this is a movie thing. I don't want to store information about movies. I don't want to store that in my program, not when it's out on the internet. I'd rather be able to go grab it and bring it into my program on an as needed basis. All right. So that's what we're going to talk about right now. So with all that said, let's go in here and we're going to be doing this program here with numbers. All right, so I'm going to make a folder here that I don't, I'll just call it, how about this? We'll call it numbers API because that's what it is. All right, and we're going to write this twice. So I'm going to open this thing. In fact, before I even do it, let's do this. I'm going to create a folder called JS, and in there we'll put in two files. On another folder, I'm sorry. We will put in two files. One will be called numbers1.js, and the other one will be called numbers2.js. All right, so there both of those are. And then I'm just going to come in here as we oftentimes do, and I'm going to create, well, instead of making them index1 and index2.html, I'm just going to make these numbers1.html, numbers2.html. All right. Now, I could be doing this, and I thought of doing this in CodePen, but I didn't know. It would either work really well or it would be a cluster. All right. Yesterday, I wanted to demo something for my class, and it was a cluster. And what I mean is, I started doing something and the program blew up and I couldn't finish. I couldn't get it to work no matter what I tried doing. I don't feel like doing that today, so I'm just going to go like this. All right. So I'm going to open this up with code. Okay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the HTML and I'm going to end up just copying it to my second one. All right. So this is going to be API, and we'll put in here just V1. All right. That should be fine. All right. So with that said, I'm going to write a little bit of code in here, not a whole heck of a lot. All right. But I am going to use some Bootstrap in here. All right. In the HTML that I write, there's not a lot. There's maybe 15 or 20 lines. All right. But what I want to do is rather than sit there and having to worry about a lot of stuff, I'm going to do a cdnjs.com and I'm going to put in here Bootstrap 5. All right. I should just probably make it Bootstrap. I don't know if this is the one I want or not, but we're going to find out right now. I don't want the JavaScript. I want the, let's see. CDN Cloudflare, Bootstrap 5.2.3. Darn it. Well, let me just do it like this. Sorry. I should have done a better prep job, I guess. Yeah, I should do it. Get bootstrap. That'd be even better. That's what we want. Okay. All right. So I've got that. I don't know what's in there. There we go. All right. And the other thing that I want to make sure I put in here is my link to numbers 1. All right. No, I'm not done, but I'm just getting there. Okay. So what else do I want to do in here? Well, the only thing that I want to put in is I want to put in a little bit more CSS. And I'm not, rather than creating a CSS file, which in fact, let's just do that. So I'm going to create a CSS file right here. I'll make a new folder, CSS, come into here and make a new file, styles.css. All right. And I'm going to put in here fact. These are going to be the number facts. And I'm going to tell it that there's a certain thing I don't want it to display. So let's jump back into our numbers here. And we've got that. We've got to put in our own now. So another one, another link. All right. Right now, it wouldn't look like anything. There's nothing that we're doing in here right now. Like I said, let me put in about these 15 lines here of code. I should have done it before class, but I was doing something else. We'll make the background dark. Usually when you work again with Bootstrap, you have one or more things, sometimes everything like we'll do inside of a container. All right, that's it for our divs. Now I'm going to put something inside of them. Okay. All right, last line. All right, let's see if I screwed anything up or if it works. Okay, that's all there. For some reason, my color didn't take, but that's not a bad thing or big thing at all, one way or the other. Dark, classic, row, auto. That'd do it. All right. Okay, good. There's still some stuff I don't like about it. It's fine the way it is. All right, let's go into the other thing, just so you know, this thing right here that says fact display none. That's when we put a number in here, when we run this in just a moment, and we put a number in there, what's going to happen is down here, it's going to give us a fact about that number. And you'll notice that this is set up as a number field. I cannot put non-numeric values in there, but I can put an ungodly number in there if I do want to. We could have put a min and a max, but that's fine. I'm just going to leave that the way it is. All right. So we want to run this thing twice. All right. And the first time that we do it, we're going to do it using what's called an XML, really an XHR request is the way it's typically referred to. And I'm going to give you all the code for that. Then we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to rewrite it using fetch. Okay. That I don't think we'll need. Okay, so let's just start writing. Okay, hopefully at least this is going to make sense. And what I mean is this. We have things, I'm not going to jump back into the HTML, but we've got things in there with IDs of fact, fact text, and number input. All right. Those have all been put in there. The one that probably makes the most sense is number input because that's the one that we're going to input. All right. Fact is basically going to be the area that's going to hold everything. And fact text is going to be the value that gets put into fact, for lack of better words. All right. Now, what we want to do, this is a little different, but we want to set up an event listener. But the event listener that we want to set up has to be associated with the value that we're about to put in. All right. So now in English, what this is saying is we are setting something up here. Okay. And when we input something so this is the event, like a click event, but when we input something into this number input, which again is just a text area or a text box. We want to call this get fact XHR. So really in the past, we've done things like this. All right, but this has typically been like a button here that we've added an event listener in, and it's been click here. You've got your choice too. After you set up an event listener like this is going to call an external routine called get fact XHR. All right. If we wanted to, we could have put all the code right in there. I thought it would have been a little boxy like to do that because I'm going to put in about 15 or 20 lines of code. All right. So I'm going to write a different routine to do that. So, and again, this can be written a bunch of ways. If you don't like it like that, we could have written it as an anonymous function. We could have written it as an arrow function, but there's really not a lot of need to do that. This is just a function that we're calling. All right. Remember, this is the number we're inputting. This is the text that we want to come out from numbersapi.com regarding that number that we input. This is the area that holds this. And every time we input something into here, we have an event listener. So we're going to be calling this routine that we haven't put any code into yet. All right. So the first is we want to get a copy of that. So I'm going to say let number equal number input dot value. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is dot value. Okay. So all that is doing is that will grab whatever value we happen to put into, all right, whatever value we happen to put into that text box. All right. Now, we only want to do this if whatever they put in there wasn't blank. So if number is not equal to blank, all right, if it is blank, there's nothing to do. They haven't put a number in there. Okay. So what do we want to do here? Well, we're going to come in and we're going to let XHR equal new XML HTTP request. So we're making a new request right here. All right. And then we have to say xhr.open get. We're going to go over all this in just a second. HTTP / numbers API.com / plus number. All right. Now there's a little more to write here, but in English, what this is saying is grab whatever number we put into the text box. Remember that we've got it set up so it's a number field. So it can only either be blank or hold a number. That's it. All right. And if it's not blank, what we're telling it to do is to create one of these new HTTP requests. Okay. And then open it as a GET request. And what we want to do is it's a GET because we're not writing anything out to the internet. So we want to go out to this address right here. And then we want to add to that whatever number we put in. So in other words, if we put in 31, it's going to go out to http / numbersapi.com / 31. So that's the one that we want to open up. All right. So when you go through this XHR, you make the request, then you do an open. So that's the second thing. The first thing is to make the request. The second thing is to do the open. All right. Then you do what's called an onload. All right. And that's when you're going to make the information available. All right. So that's what we're going to do here. Now, when you do this, if I put in something that was bizarre, and really in here, I can't do that, but let's say I didn't make this a number field. All right. Then what's typically going to happen is I'm going to get back some kind of an error message because I tried to put in something that the system didn't understand. If the system does understand what I'm trying to do, all right, it's going to send back what's called an HTTP status code of 200. And a 200 means everything was fine. Everything worked. All right, so I'm going to say here if, and you can't just say status equal 200. It doesn't like that. You can see the line through it. It wants the word this, which we really didn't get into much during the current semester. All right, but it's just something that quite often you have to use. You'll go through it in a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage next semester in the AWD 1111 class. So if it's 200, basically what we're saying is we want to display this. This is the thing that was hidden. All right. So again, we come in here. Did we put in a number? If we did, we make a new request. All right. Again, this is an HTTP request we're making. It's a GET request. We don't need a POST because we're not printing anything out or grabbing anything where we're changing a value. All we want is for it to go out to this internet address plus whatever number we gave it. Then we want it to try to load in the associated information. If it worked, in other words, if there's something to display, it's going to return an HTTP status code of 200. All right. And if it is 200, all this stuff in here, and remember earlier, we had come in here and we'd set this pound fact. We told it to display none. In other words, we told it to be hidden. But now we're saying, nope, we want its style to be block, and we want to set the text up to whatever gets returned from this call that we're actually making right here. And then there's one last thing that we have to do. So the new request, the open, the onload, that's all fine. But then we have to actually send it. Okay. And it sounds a little bit off. It's like, wait a minute, you're doing all this stuff and then you're sending it? Yeah, that's just, it's the way it works. I can't tell you anything more than that. All right. So this is if everything worked. And the only thing we got left is a very short little else statement. And we're going to say fact.style.display equal none, which is kind of mimicking what we had done earlier. So in other words, let's look through the whole thing here. Okay. This is going to be the area where we wanted to print out some information about the number that we put in. This is the actual information that we want to print out. We're using query selector there. We could have used, the $sign and made an alias. We could have used document.getElementById. There are multiple ways we could do this. This is the text box that we have in there. We're wiring up here an event listener that says anytime we make any change to this text box, call this function. So if I put in 37, and I'll do that just in just a second, what's going to happen is it's first going to give me the information about the number 3. And then when I add the 7, it'll change and give me the information about the number 37. And the way it's doing that is it's grabbing a local copy of whatever we put in there. It's verifying that it's not empty. And then it's going through the whole process in here. New request, open the request, all right, load the information in, and then send the request out. And if for some reason it doesn't work, just don't display anything. Let's see if it works. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in 30. Okay, there's 3. So 3 is the number of novels or films in a trilogy and the etc. Now, if I put in a 7, you can see how it changed. Now, that's an interesting fact. I didn't know that. 37 cents for an original Whopper, which today is probably, oh, $5. All right. If I don't put in anything, nothing happens. And the area that I have in there, this area, which is fact, disappears. And as soon as I put in a number, it comes back again. And every time I add another number to it, all right, so you can see what's happening in there. But the point is, it's going out, and it is literally going out to the internet. All right. And it's finding that information for us. Okay. And that is one way of doing it. All right. So I wanted to show you that because what it's doing here is it's really doing Ajax. In other words, as I come in here and start typing in numbers, what's in here is not changing. It's not being rewritten. What's being rewritten is what's down here based on what I key in up there. All right. And that is what's also referred to as a partial page refresh. So that's what we're doing. And like I said, I wanted to show you that. All right. Okay, so that's the first one. And the second one will go faster. We don't have to type any of this in again. I'm just going to grab everything that's here, copy it, open this up, paste it in, and just make a couple little changes. So this will be V2, and this will be numbers 2. And that's all I have to do. Now that one's done. I can close this one now, and I can close this, and I can bring up numbers 2.js. All right. Again, what I'm trying to do in here is tie up some of the loose ends. And I went back and looked at some of the stuff that we didn't go over. And I thought at least some of it, in my opinion, for whatever that is or isn't worth, was worth going over. All right. So give me just a second here. Okay. Now you're going to notice there'll be similarities in here. There'll be differences in here from what we just did. All right. What do I mean? Well, we can actually grab all of this stuff right here because we're using the same variables. So in other words, I can come in here and I still have fact. I still have fact text. I still have number input. I still want to set up an event listener. But now with my event listener, I'm not going to call it get fact XHR. I'm going to call it get fact fetch. Now, if I ran this, I'd get an error because I don't have a routine right now that's called get fact fetch. Okay, I'm going to write that right now. It's much shorter. It's much shorter, which is one of the reasons that people tend to like it more than they like using, basically an XHR request. It's shorter, and it's typically the way that it inherently works, it runs faster. Okay. It also uses something that we've talked a little bit about, but only for just a few seconds. And that is something that is known as a promise. All right. So I'm going to write this and then we're going to go over it. It's only about 10 lines or so. Just like we did before, let number equal number input dot value. Exactly what we had before. As soon as I can get that to work. There. All right. Again, if number not equal to nothing, same exact thing we did before, but now is where it differs. We don't have to go through this thing of doing an open and then, doing a load and doing a send, etc. We don't have to do all that stuff. And there's one too many equal signs in there. All right. Instead, what we do is we tell it to do a fetch. We say do a fetch, just like we did before, in that it's http://numbersapi.com/ and then we add to that the number that we just put in, exactly the same as before. All right, this is where it changes. Okay, we say dot then response dot text. And I don't know why it made that capital R, but it did. Dot then, I spelled response wrong. Okay. One more line and we're actually finished. And that's it. So let's take a minute and go over this. I'm not expecting that it makes a boatload of sense. All right. But I think, like I said, it's important enough to go through this so you've at least been exposed to this. And I'm not even going to lie. I took this off a lecture that I found on the internet. I made very few changes to it. All right. But I like the way that it was written. So, all right. So rather than doing the XHR request, we're doing a fetch. All right. When you do a fetch, you have to basically provide to it what you want to fetch. So we're telling it to go out to the internet. And again, go out to http://numbersapi.com/ whatever number we put in. Okay. Then what we're telling it to do is do this stuff in order. If when you're trying to do any of this stuff in order, if anything were to fail, then do this. All right. It's not a try catch, but it acts like a try catch in that this is basically like a try. So we're doing anything in here that can conceivably fail. If anything in there does fail, we do this. All right. And what are we doing? Well, guess what? We did this same thing when we did the XHR request. We did these things when we did the XHR request. It's the same code. But what it does is it's running this thing, all right, and it's running it asynchronously, which means do the fetch here, all right, and do this. And if this works, go in and do this. Data is just a variable that we made up because it's the data that's getting returned, all right? But just like before, all right, we're coming in here and we're setting up the response text. So this is what we're getting back from our call here. And this is telling it to display it on screen. And this is saying if there's any problem, write out to our console log what the problem is. Let's see if it works. Well, it doesn't. So let's see if we can figure out why. Type error, cannot set properties of undefined. Numbers 2, it looks like on line 17. So let's see if we can figure out what the problem is. Well, the fact is, I have a hard time spelling. I said stipe there instead of style. So let's see if that fixes it. All right, there's 1, 2, 3, etc. All right. So what you were just exposed to there, granted, it was quick. All right, but what you were just exposed to there was two different ways to be able to go out and make what's called an API call out to the internet. All right. Any questions on that, Grant?
So was that fetch function, was that the kind of promise that we were talking about earlier? Is that
Yes.
is that a type of that? Okay.
It's
And that's
well,
just
let me put it this way. It acts like a promise,
okay.
basically. All right. I don't know if you would actually call it a promise itself. And one thing we had talked about, and you will learn much more about this in your next class, is promises can be one of three things. All right. You can basically request something. In fact, let me just show it to you here. Hopefully you'll have, let's see, a promise. There we go. That isn't what I'm looking for. Okay. That's what I'm looking for. All right. So a promise can be in one of those three states. Okay. And when it's pending, that means you have not yet asked for whatever it is you're looking for. You're sort of, the way it was put to me is you're sort of in purgatory. All right. It hasn't been fulfilled yet. It hasn't been rejected yet. Fulfilled means that you asked the promise to do something and it worked. So that would mean that in the example we just looked at, we'd skip that catch statement. Rejected, all right, means that it didn't work. Now, usually rather than fulfilled, I don't know why they use that word, but normally rather than it's being fulfilled, it's called resolved. All
Okay.
right. And I this is more, I know you get it, but this is more for anybody else who's listening to this. It's the example I've given before is, I don't know, but I'm going to expect that right now you have paid your money to take the course in summer, the AWD 1111 course, but it's pending because the course hasn't run yet. All right. Once the course begins, you say, okay, I gave you my money. Now I'm getting the course. But if it would turn out that, let's say, they didn't have an instructor, hey, we're not going to run the course this summer. That won't happen. But we're not going to run the course this summer, and we're just going to cancel the course. That would be rejected. All right. So, again, as you go through this, and they give you, you can find this in a lot of places. It gets to be very confusing in here when you look at it. But sometimes what ends up happening, all right, is these dot thens, you can have 30 or 40 lines in there. Not only that, you can have catches in different places, because if you've got 30 or 4 lines, 30 or 40 lines rather, this can basically, what can happen is in different spots, this can just stop working. All right, which is typically not what you're going to want to have happen. All right. So let's start on our next one. We're going to do one more thing in here. All right. And then we are, believe it or not, even though I've been talking about it and not doing it, we are then going to jump into React. And that is a promise. All right. No pun intended after what we're just talking about here. All right. So I've got this. So this numbers API, and I've already finished it. All right. I've got a thing called numbers, and you're going to get that. I've got what we're going to do right now, which is called a to-do list. And I got these URLs. So you're going to get all this stuff. And then we'll talk some more. I'm only going to go for about 5 minutes. Then we're going to take our first break. We'll finish this. Then we're going to get in where we're starting to talk about React. All right. So I'm going to come in here and make a new folder. And I'm going to call it to do. All right. And in that folder, just like we've been doing, I'm going to create a JS folder. And in that JS folder, I'm going to make a file that I'm just going to call todo.js. All right. And outside of here, I'm going to make an HTML file that I'm going to call to-do.html. All right, so that's what we're going to start with. I'm not going to put a lick, not any CSS in here, nothing. All right, well, let's go back up one and let's open this thing up in code. So you can see what's in there. There's our file. All right, so here's our to-do HTML. There's our to-do JS. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to immediately do what we always do, and that is get this started and then start writing. All right, so in here, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to write the HTML now, and then we'll take a break and come back and write the JavaScript. It's not real long. It's long enough. It's close to 100 lines or so, but we'll take a look at it. So we've got all this, and I'm just going to put a title in here that says to-do list. So that's plenty. All right, and we're going to have a very simplistic interface in here. How simplistic? Literally about 4 or 5 lines. All right, we'll have an input in here. So in other words here, it basically is a text box. I don't like that autocomplete thing. It can be kind of a pain in the butt, so I'm going to turn that off. And we'll have a button. All right, so there's our form. Now, this is where we're going to put our to-do list, right here. And we're calling it the list. You can see I used very generic names here. The form, the field, and the list. All right, and then finally, our script tag. And that's it for our HTML. Okay, so if we take a look at it right now, it isn't going to do a flaming thing, but if we take a look at it, there it is. So the idea in here is once we put in something and we click create item, it's going to add it in here as a new list item. All right. Not only that, when it adds it in there as a new list item, what we want to do is we will want to make sure that we have 2 buttons that are connected to it or right next to it. One that says edit. So, for instance, if I came in here and I said, I don't know, get groceries, and I click this, now nothing happens except it does disappear. But when it comes here, if I spell groceries wrong, there'll be an edit button so I can change that. And there'll be a delete button. Okay. Now, a couple more things that we'll do in here. First of all, if there's nothing in here and I click create, it shouldn't create a new to-do. In other words, I don't want empty to-dos. All right. I guess I could edit it, and I didn't check for that. Well, we'll look at that in just a moment. The other thing is when you delete, all right, I want it to ask and say, do you really want to delete buy groceries? And if you don't, it's just going to stop. And if you do, of course, it'll be deleted. All right. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Let's come back. Let's take 15. All right. And let's come back at 9:15. We'll finish this up and then we're jumping into React. All right, it is 9:15, so I'm going to continue on. Let me tell you that this project that we're working on, I'm going to show you where I got it from. There's a guy who has courses online that you can buy, and he's got courses for free also, and his name is Brad Schiff. And he's got this thing out there that's called 10 Days of React. And you can see he's got a 10 Days of React, 10 Days of JavaScript, but it's pretty good. I went back and I watched it again yesterday. I've watched it twice at least, but he's got 10 different tapes in here. And the whole thing together, if you watch it, it's between 1 and 2 hours. I don't know how long. But in the first one where he goes through it, he has a code pen in there. He's actually got two of them. And I grabbed one of the code pens that he has, and I'll give you the for it. But where is it? It's right. It's no, it's there. So this is the code that we're about to put in, but I added to his. See, with his, now if I go ahead and click this, it creates a brand new to do with nothing in it, which I thought was kind of dumb. And when you click delete, it doesn't ask you if you want to delete it or not. So I added that functionality, but I can come in here and say, buy gas. All right, go to store. If I want to change that to go to the store, I can come in here and you can see it changes immediately. And I can have as many of these in there as I want. All right. And when he went through this example, part of the reason, I believe at least, that he went through the example is to show you that there are some inherent problems in working with a document object model, which is what he does in here. Probably the number one reason, this is me speaking, could I be wrong? Of course I could. But probably at least one of the reasons, the main reasons that people like React is it's so much faster than, when you were working with a website than it is to use, quote, regular HTML, regular CSS, and regular JavaScript, unquote. All right. And that's because, again, it doesn't work with the DOM, the document object model, that it has to be re-rendered every time something changes. Rather, it works with the virtual DOM, which checks with the DOM and says, oh, you've only changed this little portion, and that's all that gets re-rendered. All right. So with that said, all right, start typing here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own alias. This is how I used to always create aliases. I've done it differently this semester because I wanted to keep in line or in vogue with the way they did it with Muroc. But I always have done it like this. Like that. Now that basically is the same kind of thing that we did with like a query selector, but I like to use get element by ID. I don't know why, I just do. All right. So that is creating an alias. I'm not going to put in comment or anything in there, but now I'm going to say bind some local JavaScript script variables to their HTML file equivalents. All right. So in other words, I'm going to have variables that I'm going to create in here that I'm going to be able to use that are going to be based on the stuff that was in here. In other words, what did we have in here? The form, the list, the field. So I want to create those. Now, you don't have to call them the same thing, but calling them the form, the field, and the list really makes it obvious, in my opinion, what we're working with. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. So that's the start. Okay. Now, one of the reasons I like this example that he did is it's another thing that we talked about in class, but not in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. And that is, I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to close this and I'm going to open up this one. And that is the use of local storage. All right. And as they say in here, what you're able to do with local storage is you're able to use your own computer, all right, to save things. Now, it's not the only way, but quite often, if you are creating your own application, and let's say that application is going to have a database in it, and you're not even sure what kind of database it is you want to use. In other words, do you want a relational database like MySQL or SQL Server, Oracle, or do you want a NoSQL or a NoSQL? That, again, no means not only. Something like, for example, MongoDB. Well, while you're thinking of it, maybe you just want something where you can just save it to your own machine. And you can do that with local storage. All right. And that's what's really nice. It only allows for about 5 meg of storage, but usually if you're making a small database, that'll be enough. All right. Now, when you're working with this, as it says right here, there's local storage and there's session storage. All right. The main difference between them is local storage persists. All right. So the idea is in that example that I showed you, the one that we're going to build now with this to-do list, it will persist. So if I reload the browser or if I get out and get back in again, etc., it's going to save what I've put in there. All right. If you use session storage, that gets cleared out when the session ends. In other words, when you close the page. So this is going to give us an example of being able to use this. All right. And they go in here and there are some examples and stuff in here, but the key thing is that there's a set item when you want to put something in, there's a get item when you want to put something out, and there's a remove something when you don't need something anymore, and there's a clear if you want to get rid of everything. All right, and they've even got a link in here, as it says, to a big example. But I just wanted to mention that because what's going to happen is we're going to use local storage in here, and I wanted you to know that. All right, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say create an array called data to hold local data passed in. All right. So I'm going to say let data equal. Remember, that's how we can create an empty array. And now what we want to do is we want to check and see if we have anything in local storage right now. Of course, when we first run this thing, there'll be nothing in there because we haven't created anything yet. All right. So I'm going to say here, if local storage dot get item, right? And we're going to call this, I just called it DOM data. Don't ask me why. I think he called it the same thing or something similar in here in his. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put a blank line in there for a reason. I'll show you it in a minute. Okay. Here, what we're doing is we're doing a JSON.parse. I mean, like, what the heck is that? All right. What happens is when we put this thing into local storage, what's going to happen is our entire to-do list is going to be basically put in there as a big string. Well, that's not what we want. If we've got 10 to-do items in there, we want the first one, then the next one, then the next one, each on their own line. So what we have to do is we're going to use JSON parse. And what JSON parse does, JSON.parse, what that does is it turns a string of JSON data, JSON text, I guess you could say, whatever, into a JavaScript object. Now, in just a minute, when we get to the end of this, we're going to use the other JSON method that's in here. And that method is JSON.stringify. We'll go over that in just a bit. But what that does is the opposite of parse. All right, so parse grabs this humongous string and it breaks it down into its individual components. All right. Stringify is going to do the opposite. It's going to take those individual components and turn them into a string. All right. So that's what we've done so far. Not a whole heck of a lot. Okay. Now, the next thing we want to do is fill up our to-do list. When I say to fill it up, I want to grab currently exists. So that on load, it doesn't have to be called that. But this is going to load what's currently in the list. All right. So again, what this is going to do is this is going to go out and grab every single thing that we have into data. All right. And it's going to return it into our template. So in other words, when you saw this at the beginning, what it looked like was it just had some kind of a label, and then it had a text box, or maybe it was just a text box, and then like an add button there. And then as soon as you started entering the stuff in, it started filling up an unordered list. So this is, we're assuming that at first, at least, our to-do list will be empty. But after that, if we start filling it up, and then if we get out and get back in again, we want it to reload with all that stuff in there. All right. And that's what this will do. Now, this isn't going to be called by default, so we have to tell it. So I'm going to call onload in here. That's going to call the onload function. So I'm going to call on load. And I notice that's a capital L. To populate the to-do list with the currently existing items. I don't know, something like that. All right. When I wrote this, I didn't put any comments in, so I'm making these comments up as we're going along. All right. Now you'll notice what it's doing there. In here it says return item template. What the heck is that? Okay. That doesn't exist. So we're going to write that right now. We're going to write another function here that's called item template. We could call it anything we wanted. And what's an item template? It's a template filled with items. So we want this to show us, remember, we're storing this in an unordered list. And now you all remember from earlier in the semester, what is an unordered list? Well, it's a thing of list items. So that's what we want to return, are all of the list items that we have. So I'm going to return here, but I'm going to put backticks in here because what I return is going to be several lines long. All right, so I'm going to start with a list item right there. All right, and when I finish, I'm going to end with a list item. And then we will put in here, I'll just bring this up. All right, and so this is what we want to return. Well, what is that? Well, what we want to return is each list item. And then after we put in the item, we want next to it two buttons, one that says edit and one that says delete. So that's what we put in here. Okay. This is all going to appear on one line, but just so you hopefully at least understand what I am doing, I'm going to put it over 3 lines. So again, that's the value itself on line 34. All right. So we've got all that. Now, right now, this isn't going to do anything because we have to write a handle edit and a handle delete. We'll call those in just a minute. All right. I don't have any idea if I ran this right now, if it's going to show anything or not. Okay. So there's what we have. Again, it's not functional. So if I put something in here and click, it's not showing it yet. All right. Why? Because we've told it to come in here and handle the edit and handle the delete. That's a return, not return. Okay. And we have not yet written those. So let's write those right now. All right. We've got a handle edit. We've got a handle delete. All right. We're going to write those. But we also have, well, what if we have a new to do? Let's write that one first. The order in which we write these, of course, would not matter. All right. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to do this. I'm going to set up right now. You just saw what this looked like, what this looks like. But what I want to do is I want to add an event listener. So when I put something in here, remember, this is a form. And this button right here is our submit button. So when I submit the form, what I want to have happen is I want the new to do, like right now, when I click here, yeah, I want that to disappear, but also I want there to be a new LI down here that's got GF, 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 etc. in it. That's what I want to have happen. All right. So attempt to add a new to do. Now, why did I say attempt? Because what I told you earlier was if that to do is empty, there's really no sense in adding it because it just would be empty. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So the form dot add event listener. So again, notice now we're adding the event listener to the form. And in particular, when you attempt to submit the form, all right, we could call another function here, but I put everything in line. All right, let's see if we can do this as a function. All right, so I'm going to put in here attempt to add to do. I know that looks pretty ugly. There we go. All right, then underneath this, I'm going to put that in. So function E, and this will our attempt to add to do. If for some reason this doesn't work, I'll just revert back and put my code in there, but I think it'll work. All right, so what do we want to do in here? Let add item equal the field dot value. Why it keeps doing that, but it does. Dot value. All right. Now, what does that mean? Again, you've already seen this. Add item is now going to be equal to whatever we put in here. All right, so we've got that done. Now, like I said to you before, only add new to-do item if the item is not empty. Okay, so I'm going to say if add item, that value, if it's not equal to nothing, all right, then I'm going to attempt to add it. Now, the first thing is, remember, when you click a button, so when you come in here and click a button, since this is set up as a submit button, it's going to attempt to submit this. I don't want that to be submitted. So I'm going to say E dot prevent default. All right. And then I'm going to tell it where I want it to go. Okay. And the point is what I want to tell it is I want to insert it, and I want to insert it right underneath the last current list item that's in there. So I'm going to say the list, that's my list of LIs, dot insert adjacent HTML. And there's a thing in there that says before end. So I want to put it right before the end. All right, I'm going to put this over 2 lines just so you can read everything. Otherwise, it might scroll off the screen. And I'm going to say here, item template, the field dot value. All right. So again, there's 2 more lines here, and then then we'll end the if. So we'll talk about it then. All right. The field value equals nothing. So I'm going to clear that out. And then I'm going to call save data, which we haven't written yet, but we'll call that in just a moment. So save data. All right. Now, the only other thing I want to put in here is an else. There's different ways I could do this. I just used a simple alert. and I said, alert, no to-do item to add in text box. I'm not going to run it yet because it's going to call save data. Actually, if I commented that out, I might be able to run it. I don't know. All right. But in fact, let's try it and just see what happens. See if I get any errors or anything else. Okay, so it added it. It added it, it put in the edit button, it put in the delete button, and it cleared that out. Now, if I put nothing in here and I click it, there is my alert that says no to-do item to add in text box. All right, so far so good. So everything is working right now, which is great. All right. Now, there's really 3 more things that we have to do here. We have to be able to, from what we had up above, we have to be able to handle trying to edit. We have to be able to handle trying to delete. And then finally, we have to write this save data. I'm going to leave that commented out until we actually write it. We'll write that last. So I'm going to put in here possibly, well, let's do the edit first. So edit existing to-do item. Okay. And this will be our function that's called handle edit. All right. And what are we editing? Well, we're editing a to-do. I don't think do we make a variable called to-do already? So I think we can call it to-do. I called it just EL for element in the one that you're going to get, but why not call it what it is? So it's a to-do. All right, so that's going to be the prompt, and it'll tell you to do that. But what I want it to do is I want it to show us what's currently in there. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm going to edit something. I want what's in there. Maybe it was groceries and I forgot to put the S on the end. So I'm going to put in here what it currently has, which is to do dot parent element dot query selector dot value dot inner HTML. It's a mouthful. All right. Moment. Get to enter a modified value, and we're going to put the value that it currently has in there. All right. Now, we only want to actually put something in there if it's not empty. So if there is a new value, okay, if we left it blank, we don't want to do anything. So we're going to say here, if new value, meaning, yes, it's true, there is a new value in there. All right. Then I'm going to grab this same thing that we did here before, this thing, this whole big line with the inner HTML, and have that say equals new value. All right, try to wrap your head around this because I want it to make sense. First of all, let's save it. And let's run it and see if it works. So I'm going to put in here, wash the car. And I'm going to purposely put in wash the cars instead of wash the car. And there it is. Now I want to edit it. There it is with wash the cars. And I want it to just say wash the car. And you can see it's changed. Now I'm going to edit it again and I'm going to remove everything that's in there and I'm going to click OK. And didn't take it because it was empty. So when I modify it, I have to put something in there. Now, I don't know if I click this and I modify it and I just hit the space bar, it did take it. So I'd have to check for that too. I'd have to run a trim on it or whatever. I just didn't want this thing that's already a long enough program to get so unwieldy, all right, that I would lose people. All right. But at least what we've done so far, that is working. So our handle edit works. All right. And what are we going to do next? We're going to put in here attempt to possibly delete I'll call it the active to do. In fact, I should have put the same thing here. Edit existing active to do item. And by active, I just mean the one that I've currently selected. All right. So this will be function handle delete. Again, we'll just call it to do because that's what we're probably or possibly going to delete. All right. And like we did before, when we did this, I don't want that to be called new value. All right. But I'm going to grab this. All right. And I'm going to say let item, or I called it the item, equal. Okay. And that's to do dot parent element dot query selector dot value dot inner HTML. All right. In English, that means whatever. Okay. The item is whatever is existing right now inside of that unordered list. All right. So call this remove item. And again, I did the same kind of thing, but I said here, confirm. Are you sure you want to delete? We'll say, we called it delete. So I said remove. It doesn't matter. Item. I put it over 2 lines just so you can read it. Just like that. Okay. Now I'm not done yet, but I want to save this and I want to run it and see when I click the delete. All right. So I'm going to put in there, wash the car. And then I'm going to click delete and it should say, are you sure you want to delete item wash the car with a question mark? So let's see if that works. Are you sure you want to delete item wash the car? If I click OK, it's still there because I haven't put in the rest of the code yet. But as you can see, so far, it is working. All right. So I'm going to say here, user indicated that to do is to be removed. All right. So if remove item, we want to remove it. Okay. So to do dot parent element dot remove. And if that parent element thing confuses you, I'm in the list item. I'm in the text for the list item. That's what this is. All right. The parent of that is the actual LI itself. So what I want to actually remove is the LI. All right. Now, then I want to do another save data, which again, we haven't written. Why I keep doing that, I don't know. But let's see if we come in here and do this. It's gone. So all that is working. The only thing that's not working right now is we're not persisting. That's what this saved data is going to do. So right now, we are not persisting with anything that we are attempting to do. All right. Again, all I mean is this. So if I come in and say, again, wash the car, and I click there, yeah, we've got wash the car. But you'll notice if I refresh, it's gone. It's not persisting. That's what saved data is designed to do. So let's write that one. It's not very long, about a half dozen lines or so. But first, let's go and use that saved data that we had in here that I commented out, and let's uncomment it. All right. So I'm going to come in here now and do my save to-do list. And again, I'm going to save it with a function that's called save data. All right. And we can do this in a lot of different ways. All right. So let me put in, there's literally about 3 lines of code. All right. And I'm going to put in a comment also in here, but let me put it all in, and I promise we'll put this program to rest. I will go over what's left in it then. See if I do a view word wrap. It's going to wrap in just a second. So. All right. Then a comment and one more line and we're done. All right. And that is everything. Let me first save it and see if it works. Then we'll go back and take a look at this save data. All right, so I've got a few things in there. Let's edit one to see what it looks like. Say wash both cars. Clean the gutter, delete, say no, do it again and say yes. Okay, that all works. All right, now let's refresh. Oh, I thought it would have persisted and it didn't. That's not great. So let's go back and first look at it and then see if we can figure out what the problem is. All right, so this is save data. All right, I can already tell what the problem is. That should have said set item, but I want to go over this program from top to bottom. All right. And just to make sure you've got at least a fundamental understanding of what's going on. In this save data, this right here is going to be a string array that's going to end up holding everything that is in our unordered list. All right. So we've got this thing called all items. Okay. And then what we're doing is we're coming in here right now and we're looping through all of the um, current to-do list items. All right. Then we are pushing in here the last thing that we just did. And even though it says a push, all right, remember, we're calling this whether we're saving something or deleting something. Now, earlier, we went and grabbed this information out of local storage. That was a get item. All right. Now we're attempting to write this information back into local storage. That's a set item. So again, when you're using getters, they're also referred to as accessors. You're grabbing information. When you're using setters, you are setting information. All right. Now, let's take a look. Let's take a look at his. All right. I think I kept it up here. Me, probably knowing me, I didn't, but let's see. I didn't. All right. So let me go and grab the copy that he made and see if his works like mine or doesn't work like mine. So let's see. I think I had. See, I try to give attribution. I say glean from, which basically means I stole it from there. Right. So let me put this in. All right. So this is his right here. You'll notice it did persist, or it looks like it did. Yeah, it is. And mine's not. So I'm missing something. I'll look and just see what I'm missing. And now I come back here and I go back in here and create. So again, wash the car. All right. Buy groceries. I've got 2 items in here now. If I go and refresh, those 2 items are still in there. All right. However, if I go out and I bring this up again, they're still in there. So I'm working with my own copy here, but it is persisting. So for some reason, I'm missing something in mine. I guarantee you that I will go back and look at it beforehand. All right, before I give it out to you. All right, to see if I can figure out why his persists and mine doesn't. My guess is, why is his persisting and mine not? All right, that he must have something in here that I have, or I have something in here that he doesn't, but I will look at it. All right. Now, a few more things I want to do, and then we're going to take another break, or we'll just keep going. First of all, I'm going to give everybody this. Kind of, the person who is known as kind of the godfather of React is a guy who is named Robin Wirich. He's got a blog that you can subscribe to and get all sorts of stuff. So why am I giving you this? Because he puts this book out there for free. You can buy it. Of course, he makes money when you buy it. He doesn't when you do this. Now it says 2022 edition, and it says this was published in 2022. So I don't know. I have no idea if this is the quote newest or not, but it's got to be darn close. It says 268 pages. But notice the fundamentals of React, the roadmap for React, styling in React, even advanced things in React, and even deploying a React application. So I've saved this, and literally I Googled it because I knew that he had it available. You will get a copy of this. So it's something you may want to take a look at or may not. All right. Also, under dev or developer.mozilla.org, if you go in there and you search for React, they've got a section in here that's called Getting Started with React. And it's pretty good. All right. And they go through all the stuff that's in here. It's a pretty long article. You can see if I look. All right. You can see that it's pretty long. And then one of the things that they do, and it's something we're going to do, but ours will be totally different, is they've got a React to-do list. Now, it's a lot more ornate than mine is. You can grab the code. You'll see that when we do it, it won't be this one, or you can see it running in action. So when you look at this, you can see what we have. It's got eat, sleep, repeat. I guess that's meant to be funny, but I can go in here and I can delete and delete. Notice it goes 2 tasks, 1 task. Now it's got no tasks. So I can come in here just like we did before, wash the car, click add. All right, 1 task remaining, it's active. It's wash the car. All right. Now, if I go and click on it, it goes away. Okay. So if I go and do a wash the car again, and I click add, now it's in there, right? If I click completed, now notice it gets a check mark by it, but it doesn't go away. All right. If I go to active here, basically it's going to turn it on or turn it off. But if I go and add another thing, buy groceries, and I click add for that, now you'll notice it doesn't show because I've only got the completed shown. If I go to active, all right, what it does is it takes that check off. I just don't like the way it works. What I do like about what they do here is when you click edit, notice it brings it right up here, where mine put it into into an alert, or really into a prompt statement. So if I change that to wash the cars and save, you can see that it changes. Now you can do this, go back and do a view page source, and notice what happens. It's all in there, but it shows it like that. But you could hit enter and you could put all the different stuff in there. That's fine. All right. Now, one of the things that I showed you the other day was CodePen. That's what's right here. And as I mentioned to you, when you use CodePen, even though it doesn't show the middle area, there's 3 areas. So again, I've got right here, got my HTML, there's my JavaScript. Well, I could come into here. Remember, we've got something, I believe, that has an ID on it of, why don't you let me go in here? There we go. That's called the form. All right. And I don't know if this will work or not. Now, normally, if we wanted to change the background color of our form, if we wanted to change it, normally you would say, you're used to doing this, background color, for example, green. All right. And you'll notice when I do that, nothing happens. The reason for that is when you're working in here, I believe at least, you're gonna have to do it like this. Now, that's still not going to change, but we could actually come in and change it in here. I don't remember how to do that. And I wanted to show you something that was stupid to show you because it didn't work. All right. But the point is we go in here, in fact, it's called our form, not the form like I called it, because I didn't like his naming convention. So that did work. Didn't change everything, but that actually is the form right in there, not the list. So it did make it yellow. All right. So that did work with background dash color. However, if you want to change that in JavaScript, and you can do it in there as well, you can't use background hyphen color. You've got to you've got to do it like this. This will not work in here, but you've got to do it. Whoops. like that with a capital C. Now that doesn't work in here. It would work if we did it in there. All right, if we're using just, in fact, even I got to spell it right, but notice it doesn't work. Whereas if I do this, it does work with the minus sign there. There we go. All right. But what I decided to do, I mean, I even grabbed a whole bunch of URLs for you to take a look at. All right. And just to show you, this is the list that I've been creating here. All right. How to use CodePen, using React on CodePen, CodePen to do, how to build React apps, etc. And there's some good reading. But I will tell you that once you start to build a file of any size, you're not going to want to use CodePen. All right. And what I'm going to do now is show you what we are going to want to use. You do not have to do this. You do not have to do this. But this is what we're going to be starting with tomorrow. All right. Leave. Notice it asked if I wanted to leave the site, and I said yes. And what it meant was anything that I had written is not going to be saved. All right. All right. This is what we're going to go over in just a moment. But before we do, there's two ways that you can do this. It's basically the same thing, and it doesn't matter. All right. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a folder right here. And I'm going to make a new folder. And I'm going to call that folder to-do list. Now, when you are making folders in React, even though you can get it to work without doing it, I think, just get used to making every character lowercase like this. So I've got an empty folder here that's called to-do list. You'll notice if I open it up, there is nothing in there. It's exactly what you'd expect. Now, there's different ways that you can create a React application. I'm going to show you right now two of them that it's almost identical, but just so you see them. So I'm going to right mouse click on here. I'm going to go into my Git Bash window. To do this, you have to have Node installed on your machine. Okay. So I'm going to type in here npx create React app and then a period and hit enter. Now, I want to move this because I want you to see if I typed it in right, and I think that's correct. I'm going to start getting some stuff in here. This will take anywhere up to 2 minutes, depending on the speed of your internet connection. Well, maybe it'll take more than that, but it's not too bad. It's building an entire folder structure right now. We're going to go over in just a second what the stuff in here means. We're going to do this today, and we're going to do it just once so that we don't have to do it again. All right. Or you'd be able to have something that you could go back to take a look at. All right. Now you'll notice it made a bunch of folders in there, including a Git folder. When it gets done, it'll say happy hacking, and then that's it. Now we've got everything. All right. Now, first, I want to start by giving you my take on what's in here. This read.md, this is a markdown file. This is just created for you automatically. The only reason I'm bringing this up is what you're going to start doing when you start using Node and then React is you're going to be doing a lot of work with localhost followed by a port number. All right. React can run on any port, but historically, it runs on port 3000. And I just wanted you to see that. It's not a big thing, but just so you see it. All right, so what else is in here? Well, again, there's our Git folder. So it basically did a Git init in here for us. All right. So let's just take this. I'm taking it from the bottom instead of from the top. It's got a thing in here that's called package package-lock.json, which is very intimately related to the package.json right above it. But let's go to here first to this package lock JSON, and I'm going to open that up. What it has in here, as you start looking, is it has all of the packages that it went out to NPM and it loaded in here. All right, that it loaded in here for us to be able to use. What do I mean? Well, when you look in here, there's some CSS tools, some project stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Babel, which we'll look at in just a second. And there's other stuff in here as well. I'm going out on a limb here to say you should never, ever, ever have to touch this file. The only reason I wanted to show it to you is what it's meant to do is to show you the version of each one of these things that's in here that it's using. That's kind of what a package lock.json file does. The actual packages are in package.json right here. You notice it's a lot smaller. So what it's saying is right now, not a whole lot. What it has, it meaning the system has loaded for you is some testing stuff. I've never dealt with that, so I don't even know what that does. It loaded the newest version of React. It loaded the newest version of React DOM. We'll talk about that in a bit. It loaded in the newest version of React Script. And it loaded in about this stuff as we go on. Then under scripts, it's showing you in here the 4 different ways. All right, the 4 different ways that you can run your program. What do I mean? Well, you might say, oh, so I can type in React script starts or React scripts build, etc. No. If we want to run this application, which we'll do in a moment, if we type in npm start, that's the way you'll run most of your applications. It runs this script. If you were going to put this project that you were building out onto production, so you were going to put it out onto the internet, you would probably do an npm build because it does the same thing as start, but it builds any system files basically that are needed. If you were doing testing, you would run npm test. And I've never used eject, so I can't say any more about that. All right, that's what you have to know in here. Now, start in the AWD1111 class, what's going to happen is when you start to, before you even talk about React, you're going to talk about Node, also known as Node.js or Node.js, and you're going to have to talk about a component of Node called Express. The reason I'm telling you that is when you start to create Node projects, you're going to have in there a package.json and a package lock.json file. They won't look like this. This is the one that's built specifically for React. All right. Okay, so that's those first 2 things. Let's see what else we have in here. Next, we've got a git ignore file. All right, and this is what's in there. A bunch of stuff. All right. The key one that's in here is this one. All right, and again, I'm going to explain this to you. I'm not going to assume you're going to totally understand it yet. All right, but when you go and you put something and you get ready to go and put it out on the internet, the difference in size between adding what's in this node modules folder and not adding it is fairly astronomical. You say, what do you mean? Well, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to check. This is the size of my project right now. It's 225 meg. Now that's not that big, but it's 225 meg. It's big enough. All right. Now, if I just look on my node modules that's right here, if I just do that, and I check on the size of just that, that's 224 of the, meg of the size. And you don't have to download or upload node modules. There's another way to get to that. We'll talk about that, just not right now. So the point is, what we have put into this file here, into this get ignore file, where did I put that? Wherever I put it. All right, right here are things that we don't need to upload with our project. So that's going to make our project a lot smaller. It'll load faster, etc. So you put into get ignore things that you don't want to be included when you upload your project to the internet. Okay. All right. Then next we have a source folder. And you notice there's a bunch of stuff in here. There's an app.css, an app.js, an app.test.js, an index.js, a logo.svg, a report vitals, webvitals.js, and a setup tests.js. Totally fine. All right. Now, I want to show you something, and that is I'm going to take the program that we just created. I haven't put any code in. I think you'd agree with that. And I'm going to run it. So I'm going to say npm start. And it's going to actually bring it up in a browser. Okay. And you'll notice, if you can see this, it's using port 3000. All right. This is what you get out of the box. You get this spinning little logo here. All right. This is the React logo. You get the text that says edit source / app.js and save to reload. And you get a link here for learning React that pushes you to the React main page. So that's what you get out of the box. Okay. It's just that. Why am I showing you that? Well, notice what happens here. I'm going to stop. In fact, I can leave it running. I don't think it'll hurt anything at all. But I'm going to come in here and I'm going to make some changes. All right. In fact, this is kind of ugly. So let's take this. Let's take our project, which is called to-do list. Let's bring it up in VS Code. All right, we can do that. You can work all this stuff in Visual Studio Code. Now, this is a lot bigger than what we've dealt with before. I already went over the readmd with you. I went over the package.json with you. I went over the package lock.json with you. And I went over the .getignore with you. So let's go to here. All right. Now, the stuff that's in here goes all the way to getignore. We're not going to do any testing. So I'm going to get rid of that. We're not going to do any web vitals, and that has to do with keeping website statistics. So I'm going to get rid of that. Whoops. Right again. Come on, there we go. All right, I don't want it. This is that logo. This is the logo that you saw, that spinning thing. I don't want that. All right. Okay, I'm not going to do any testing. Okay, so let me click on that, try to highlight it. There we go. And I'm going to delete that. So what's left in here now? App.css, app.js, index.css, and index.js. Now, I don't want to steal Mr. G's thunder, and the way that I'm going to explain this and the way he explains it may be two totally different things. I don't know. But I'm going to go first into this app.cs. All right. And you'll notice, what do we have in here? There's that logo. That's the logo. Okay. We don't have the logo anymore. So I'm removing that stuff. Then we've got a background color and a bunch of other stuff. All right. I don't have a logo to spin. So I'm going to get rid of these keyframes. that are in here. I don't need that either. Okay, so I've cut it way down. If I don't care about how the header looks, I could technically remove every bit of this and it'd be fine. In fact, I'm going to remove every bit of it, but the text align center, I'm going to keep that in there. And now everything else is gone. Okay. Then I'm going to go into the app.js file and take a look at what's in there. Well, this is that logo that we just removed. So I'm going to get rid of that. This in here, you have probably never seen anything that looks exactly like this. This is called JSX. JSX is an acronym that basically stands for JavaScript extensions. And what JSX does is it allows you to write HTML-like statements right in your Java script. All right, that may not sound that important right now, but it's very important. This is going to bring in that CSS file that I just removed everything from except that text center. All right, and it's an import. You might remember from yesterday, we talked about import statements. All right, so really what's in here, that's our JSX. Now, when you are working with this stuff like this, you can only return one thing. So you'll notice what I'm returning is all inside of a div. But you're like, you're not returning one thing. There's a header and there's a paragraph and there's an anchor link. Yeah, but it's multiple things inside of one thing. So what I'm telling you is what you put on the outside after this return statement. If you're going to return multiple things inside of it, it's typically going to be a div. All right. Now we've got rid of that image with a logo in it. So that's gone. We got a paragraph that right now says edit this and save to reload. I'm just going to change it. So it just says hello world. Okay. And this is that hyperlink that's in there. I don't want that either. So I'm going to get rid of that. So that's all gone. All right. With hello world in it. We need the header. Let's just keep the paragraph. All right. So what I've done is I've taken that app.css file and I've cut it way down. So that's all that's in it now. All right. So let me save this. And then let me go in because what's left is index.css and index.js. So index.css, well, these are kind of standard things. No margin, the font family you want to use, etc. We could remove that. I'll just leave it. It's not going to hurt anything. Index.js. There's one line in here that's the most important line of your entire program. Well, I thought it was in here, but it's going to be up in public. All right. What don't we need in here? Well, we're not using that Web Vitals anymore. Okay. This is basically where everything is going to appear on the screen. All right. Notice it's a document.getElementById root. And root right there is basically what's going to come and go in there. Now, I don't need this report vitals. I showed you that before. I removed that. All right. So see if I broke it or I didn't break it. So I'm going to go back again. And notice what happened. It immediately updated. It removed what was there and it has hello world. That's what I put in. And remember that CSS that I left said text align center. Why am I taking 5 or 10 minutes to explain all this to you? The answer is usually when you start with a brand new program, this is the cleanup that you're going to do on it. All right. And what's going to end up becoming really important is what you put inside of here. Because what you end up putting inside of there are what are going to be known as components. In a component, in a way, it's sort of like a function. But you may or may not remember the other day I brought up, I can bring up anything. So for example, I can bring up YouTube here. And if I look on here, what do we have? We've got a ton of components. We've got one component that contains everything we have. We've got another component that's this right here. We've got a bunch of components with buttons in here. We've got each one of these as a component. You can see they all pretty much look the same. We got more components that look a little different, some more components that kind of look the same, etc. What React is about building components. All right. I mean, of course, there's more to it than that. All right. But that pretty much is what it's about. So what else is in there? What didn't I explain yet? Let's go over that. So that's everything that's in here. Okay. Now we've got public and we've got node modules. Let's go over both of those. In public, that's that icon. There it is. We don't need that anymore. We've got an actual index.html in here. I'll let you read the comments, but again, there's that div ID equal root. Okay, as it says, this is a template, and that's typically you're not even going to touch the public index.html. You're typically not even going to touch it. All right, so I'm going to close that. In fact, I'm going to close all these that are open. And what else is in here? Well, here's another bigger picture of a logo and an even bigger picture of the logo. Remember, this is designed to hopefully be responsive. So we want different pictures depending on the size of the machine we're using to look at it. I don't need this, so I'm going to remove it. I don't need this, so I'm going to remove it. This manifest.json, this is a bunch of system stuff. Do we need it? Technically, no, because look, icons, we just remove this stuff. But this, the one thing this does do is it gives you a favicon. So if I go back, said, wherever it was, hello world, it's got, that's the React logo right there. So you probably don't want to keep that, but you probably won't need to touch this. All right. Then you've got this robot.txt file. And we did talk about this file. You may or may not remember it, but what it is it's anything, what you put in there are any files that when you submit your website to a, to Google or to, whatever search engine, Bing, or, whatever, Yahoo, whatever is still out there, you put in there any files that you don't want the search engine to go through, or what's called spider. All right, so that's what's in there. You typically won't have to touch that either. All right, so the only thing that's left in here is this one. These are all of the different dependencies. These are all of the different dependencies that your program uses. All right, if you remember, this was 224 of the 225 meg. And I said, and you don't even need to provide it. And the reason that you don't need to provide it is if you have in here that what I showed you before, if you have this package.json file, all right, and then you go and upload this without these files, and once you upload it, all you have to do when you upload it is you have to run the command npm I, which says, hey, go out to the package.json file, and anything that's in there, anything that's in there, just add it. Now, this will probably not do much because the stuff's already there. Okay, it says it's all up to date. Now, typically, I'll try it. I don't typically like to do this, but I'm going to try it anyway. And that is, I'm going to go into my node modules folder right here. This big thing, 224 meg, and I'm going to remove it. This isn't a file, a program that means anything anyway. So take a while because it's removing 224 meg. That it's going through the process. All right, says you need admin permission. Yeah, continue. Just keep trying. Now, I've done this with node projects. I've never done this before with the React project. So I'm going to try to rebuild this as soon as this clears. All right. When you do it with Node, literally it goes like that because you're not typically loading as many things as what got loaded in here. Well, and what should happen then is when we get done, I should be able to go back then. It says fail to delete using the recycle bin. Do you want to permanently delete? Yeah, delete it. Like I said, I've never tried doing it this way. So it'll be interesting. Okay, it's gone. How do I know it's gone? Well, you can see that it's not there. Plus, if I go back to this and I look at my size, it is now down to 870K as opposed to before when it was 20 or 255 meg. But what I'm going to try to do, and I think this will work, we'll see, is I'm just going to come back in. Let me go back. I want to show you this with this up on the screen here. I'm going to close that. There's nothing in there right now, but I'm going to come back in here. Hopefully this will work. If I get an error, then it won't work for this. npm I. Notice there's node modules. It's rebuilding everything for me. That is why you do not have to go in or that's why you put the node modules folder in your git ignore file. Right? So if I come back again to where I just was, and I right mouse click on to-do list again, there it is at 225 meg. All right. So I gave you a lot of stuff. All right, but we haven't built anything yet. We are going to do this tomorrow. It's my promise. Again, be leery of the fact that if you've got a lot of projects that you have on your machine, notice this is 225 meg right here. So if I built 4 of these, that's a gig. Big, really fast. That's what I'm telling you. All right. Just so you're aware of that. It's not that it's a big thing one way or another, but I wanted you to be aware of that. All right. Now, almost finished, but I found a couple things in here. This is one from, where is it? xenonstack.com. And I'm going to give you the URL because it explains probably better than I did what's in every one of these folders. And there'll be some folders you haven't seen yet. For instance, there is an assets folder. That's where you're going to end up putting your images. And there's other ones that are in here that are explained. All right. And I'm going to give you this article that's right here too. React, Hello World, and Files folder structure. It goes over pretty much a lot of the stuff I just went over with you, but I just like to use my own verbiage as opposed to what the authors in these things use. All right. So tomorrow, what I'm planning on doing, if I can get to it tonight, and I hope I can, and that is, I want to rebuild probably at least the rock, paper, scissors. We'll rebuild that, and we'll rebuild that in React, and then we'll try to do the BMI one too. And the BMI one we might do a couple times. All right. And we're going to write it in a different way. We'll write it from very simplistic to a lot more advanced. All right. We'll start there. That'll get us through Wednesday, I believe. Then on Thursday, we'll see where we're going to go from there. I want to do Monday through Thursday of this week. And then next week, either Monday and Tuesday or just Monday. Probably Monday and Tuesday, where I'd like us to build an entire website and do it using React, and ideally try to deploy it out onto the internet as well. That'll give you something, again, that if you want to, you'll be able to put into your electronic portfolio. All right. So, Grant, thanks for sticking around. Unless you have any questions on anything, we'll just pick it up tomorrow at 8:05.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, see you then.